Our first person to share this morning is the reason we're having a family reunion. I told you a little bit last night why we did not continue them 4 years ago. It was the right decision. And you know, it's the best thing to do is just do what you're told. Your parents always tell you, just do what I tell you. You know, why? I quit asking God why. Just do it. Some people tell me, I don't know why. This is what it's going to be right now. It was the right decision. And about 2 years in, people would say, hey, when are we having another reunion? Now, this was not the young people. This was the older folks. Now, think about that. Who loved the family reunions when you were growing up? Well, when I was a kid, I did not want to go to the family reunion. I was like, oh my gosh, and they sit around, and they talk about, oh, we got to eat all, yeah. So keep that in mind. But we honor well. God likes to meet the needs of everyone. I want the young people to see how we do it. This afternoon, you're going to meet some of our young people because they're all busy working. And so when I heard after 2 years, people, when are we going to have one? When are we going to have one? And the Lord never said a word. And when I went to North Carolina and I met Sylvia Allen, I've known her through the years, but I was down there. We were doing Vicki Allen's ordination, Vicki and Ellie, and they send their love. Their mother is 96, and they were supposed to be here with us this weekend. They were at the very first Power of God weekend 25 years ago. Ellie did the opening prayer. I listened to it the other day. And they said, we so want to be there and minister and sing and be with everyone, but Mom is 96 and she needs us. So that's how we live life and honor people well. And at that ordination, Sylvia is there with her daddy. And she said, when are we going to have another reunion? I'd like to get to one of them before I die again, you know. And when she said that, the Lord said, do it. We're here because when Sylvia spoke, the Lord said, do it. And so she said, so I called her and I said, guess what? I really would like you to share a little bit. And she said, I knew you were going to ask me. I do. And she took her time. She said, I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to pray about it and let you know. And because she said, I wanted the Lord to tell me what to do. I know she's going to talk about her daddy, but if you've not heard me talk about this, her daddy was a very funny man. And Tom and I went down for that ordination and we met him. And the first thing he said to me, well, maybe the last little section was, he had a very heavy Georgia accent, correct? Not North Carolina, he was from Georgia. I don't know if I can get into that accent. He dragged it like that. He said, I remember he was in his big fancy white truck, big huge truck, and Sylvia drives him. My Sylvia driving me around my big truck, and he leans out the window. He goes, "I want you to come to my 100th birthday party. Party. You come to my birthday party. I give Sylvia the money. In a year, we're going to have a party for my 100th birthday. I want you to come, and I don't want you to bring your husband because I want you to have a good time." And I looked at him, and I'm like, okay. And so the hostess, Buffy Hargrave was there, and she had made this coconut cake. And I love coconut cake. I especially love coconut cake from Brooklyn, where the Jewish bakeries are. And she made one that was just like it. And she gave me a big old piece, and I had we had cake the night before, so she had two kinds. So the day before I had cake, and she goes, now this is the coconut cake. I want you to get a piece, but we got to make sure, help me remember to get a piece for John. It's his favorite too. And so I knew he loved cake. So I said, well, I'll come to your party. I tried to talk back to him that way. It didn't work out real good. And I said, I'll come to your party if you're having cake. And he said, Lord, not Lord, Lord, like L-A-W-D. Lord, girl, I took one look at you and know you's like cake. Yeah? Now, when you're 100, you can say whatever you want. And I'm going to laugh. I laugh. I tell that story all the time myself. I hear him. And every time I have cake, I hear him say, Lord, girl, you like cake. And so we went back for the 100th, Chris and Jan Rollins and Jeff and I went for the 100th birthday. He asked for Ellie Ray Allen. There were 100 people there at least, maybe 200. And they pulled in a big flatbed wagon. And he asked for Ellie Ray to get up and preach Jesus at his 100th birthday. And that's what he had. And then he wanted to sing 2 songs. Was it This Little Light of Mine? There were 2, like what we would consider little kid songs. Jesus Loves the Little Children of the World. That was the one. He wanted that, and he wanted Amazing Grace. Those were his songs. And when I went up to the chair with him to meet him, and he was sitting in his chair, even though he was hopping all around. Been a long day. He was in his chair, and I have Jeff with me. And now this has been a year I haven't seen him. And he looks at Jeff and he said, Lord, you brought your husband. He remembered what he told me a year ago. And Jeff's like, what? He was just the sharpest, most wonderful person. I'm sure Sylvia will talk about them to some degree, but he was married for over 70 years to the love of his life, took care of her for years while she was ill, and a very special person. And Sylvia is a product of a wonderful family, and she's from North Carolina. Our pastor Kevin's from North Carolina, and he's going to escort her out. Please stand and welcome Miss Sylvia Allen.
Well, my daddy was 100, so I came through long periods with him. He was one of 13 children, and at the end, near the last 4 to 5 years, he started sharing his war stories with me. And I know he did that because he wanted people to know. And he was funny, and he was a great dad, most of the time. Proverbs 11:2, and this is the New International Version. This was a week before his 100th birthday. I begged him not to do it. My son tried to prevent him. And then he called all his neighbors and said, he said, Ted will not let me cut hay. You're 100, Daddy. And now he had an aneurysm and some other little things, but he never let that stop him, never. And he said, I'll take my urinal and I'll take water and I'll be fine. And he did. And he mowed for about 4 hours. So we went and checked on him, but he took a nap and he had water. So, and that was in June of 2019. And he was diagnosed with bladder cancer in April of 2019. And a lot of his family had cancer. And on the way back from the doctor's office when he was towed, he said, you know what? I thought at this age I had beat cancer. He said, everybody had it, but I didn't think I would ever have it. He never believed he would have it. And I admired him so much for saying that, because he was believing to live to be 100. And we really didn't know how bad it was, because the doctor told him, I'm not going to do anything until after your 100th birthday. He said, you've got a sound mind, it's good, you don't want to lose that. He said, so, and he lived by himself. He wouldn't let nobody live with him. And he cooked. He cooked. He didn't clean, but he cooked. But that was the day he was on the tractor a week before the party. And let me read this verse, Proverbs 11:2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. And I saw my dad. In the 20 years he took care of my mama, they were married 73 years, come from being a proudful, proud man to knowing who God was. He asked God every day of his life to let him live until Mama died, because he didn't want her in a nursing home. And that's how much he loved her. 73 years. Can you imagine? I can't. So, but I was there with him most of the time. On the weekends, I worked, but he was there at night. He couldn't go out. He couldn't leave her. So all his Christian friends would call him and give him encouragement. And some of those folks call me now because they want to check on me and see how I'm doing, because they knew I went every day to Daddy's. And you know, after he died, my truck even went to Daddy's. I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Where are you going? He's not there." And things like that will make you cry and make you remember. But we had a good time together. I got in the ministry in the 80s, like 87, I believe. And, of course, my daddy, I told him about it. And then he had asked all his church people. And they said, "I think that's a cult. You need to get her out." And he told me that, so I said, "Okay." Poor child of mine, my oldest child, was taking the class. And I said, "We got to stop. You can't go back." He didn't understand. So, but I waited 3 weeks, and that was all I could take. I had to go back. And Scott had to start the class all over, and he said, "Why can't I just pick it up where I left off?" Because he was like 12 years old. And I said, "Nope, you can't do that." So, but we had a great time, me and my kids. God gave me a house. I needed a home, and I got to build one. And that was God. And when Mama got sick, I was over there helping Daddy, and then I moved away for a while. And I would come home at least twice a month from South Carolina and help him on the weekends. And we had great times together. And one day, just in the last few years, probably 5 or 6 years ago, he looked at me and he said, "I think you're the smartest girl I got." And I said, "No, Daddy, that's God. God tells me what I need to do and say to you." And he looked at me and said, "I don't doubt that." He had a friend. He said, I introduced him to these people, and this woman said, "John, you got the best friends in the world." And he said, "Well, they wouldn't be my friends if they weren't good." How logical is that? But Daddy said he asked God to help him every single day with Mama. And he never complained. And his poor shoulder was gone. His 2 knees were gone. He never had those operations to fix anything. But he would keep going, keep going. He had cows and chickens and got up hay. But he got rid of the chickens about 3 years before he died. So he stayed busy all the time. And then we would talk about the word continuously because I wanted to make sure. And I asked him he couldn't go to church, and I told him I'd keep Mama and let him go to church. And he said, "No, I can't do that to you." And I said, "Okay." So after Mom died, I said, "You want to go to fellowship with me?" And I didn't know how he was going to react because this was a cult. He said, "Is Vicki and Elaine going to sing?" I said, "Well, if they're there, they will." He said, "Okay, I'll go." Well, they weren't there that time. But he enjoyed it. He did. He really did. Doug was great, and Buffy with him. And so he kept going back with me. And when they were there, he was so happy. And they really gave him the songs that he needed to hear at that time in his life. And I know when he died, he was born again. My son, my middle child, Ted Lyle, he was 45 years old. When Daddy got real sick at the end, my children and grandchildren stayed with him at night while I could stay during the day. And Dad was with him. I'll never forget. Daddy said, "Sylvia," he gave me power of attorney for his health stuff. He said, "Please never put me in a nursing home." I said, "I won't, Daddy. I'll be here." He was kind of dopey from some of the medicine they gave him. But I told my sisters came over, and I said, "Would y'all please stay with Daddy for 2 hours and let me finish my month-end work?" I said, "Okay." Well, they called me up before the 2 hours and said, you got to come here. Daddy won't take his medicine. He wants to know where you are. You got to come back. I said, okay. And he said, when I got back, he said, where in the hell have you been? I said, Daddy, I had to do some work. And he said, on that daggum computer. I said, yeah. And he said, well, I needed you. And I said, I understand, but I'm back. He said, why'd you put me in a nursing home? I said, Daddy, you're in your room. You're not in a nursing home. He was in a hospital bed. And he said, well, I said, see all your stuff? I said, just look around. This is all your stuff. You brought it in. I said, it's not a nursing home, Daddy. But my sisters had wanted to put him in a nursing home. And I objected to all that, so that's why he thought he was in a nursing home, I think, because they were there and I won't. So after that, I didn't leave him no more. And then my son, on the night he died, we'd all been there pretty late. I stayed late. And I told Ted I was going to go home and sleep. Well, he was my daddy's precious grandson. They lived right there together, and they helped each other all the time. But Ted said when he died, at 5 o'clock in the morning, which I was getting dressed to go over there at that time, and he said that Daddy raised one hand, and then he raised the other. And he said he was receiving God. He said, I know the angels were there. And about 3 days before he died, he was laying in that bed, and he said, Sylvia, who's that man sitting over there? And I said, Daddy, there's no man over there. He said, he's sitting at a desk. Who is it? And I said, okay, what you're getting to see is something I'm not. I said, I do believe it's an angel, and letting you know everything's okay. So we had great times together, but he got meeker and meeker and listened to the word more and more. And it just blessed my life to be able to have those conversations with your daddy. He's been raised very different than we were. He was in the cavalry at 17. He was in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge. And he was on the front lines. He drove a bulldozer, and he had to take out the Germans would go in and take down trees while they couldn't get in with their equipment. And he had to be the one to go out there and clean that up while they could get stuff through. And they put a big thing on the front of his bulldozer while the bullets wouldn't get him. And he said one of them came. And he said his captain, he said he was one of these people that stayed drunk, Daddy said, the whole time because he got a Dear John letter. And he just couldn't get it together after that. He said, but he was on the back hollering, go for it, go for it. And these shells are coming at him. He said one of the shells hit the front of his bulldozer. And he said he was so worried about the captain because it threw him off. And he said he just was lucky he got put in a big pile of snow. But he had great stories, y'all. My daddy was keep it simple and just believe. And but to see him change and see God bigger and bigger in his life every day just blessed me.
She said, did I do good? Yes, you did good. Can I ask for that? That's what a woman of faith looks like. Next to the word grace in the Bible is Sylvia's picture. And next to the word bulldog is Sylvia's picture. Probably heard daddy before. But that's what family looks like. I said to some of our young people this morning, I said, listen, part of our ministry, my ministry, and if you're going to be with me, this is what we're going to do, is honor people well. Give them the opportunities to do what they've been studying and living their whole life to do. And help them go through the transition of sleeping in Jesus or waiting for Christ's return with honor and wisdom, that will receive their wisdom and suck everything out of them we can and learn from them. And that's how it goes from generation to generation.